Okay, everyone. This week, last class that I've done on this platform was last week Wednesday night, so it's a whole week, and we got to do a lot of catch up. So welcome to Key to Redemption in Our Hands, episode 31. This one is called "Are You Ready to Greet Mashiach?" And this one is class 2 in that episode. So this is. So let me give you, for those that I saw there was a lot of um, new listeners, and people are obviously very aware that Mashiach is about to come. And we're holding at the very last seconds before the redemption, or at the onset of the redemption. So anything that has to do with Mashiach, people are tuning into. So I want to tell you just a little background of what we're doing over here. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, from the very day one that he became Rebbe, the seventh Chabad Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson. So when he became Rebbe, from the very beginning, he said his focus and his entire purpose was declared, his mission was to complete and bring about the final redemption. He said it in his first discourse when he assumed the mantle of leadership from his father-in-law. And he spoke very clear words that his positioning in this world, the role that he is to play, is the last link of a 7-link chain of incredible masters, of holy rabbis, and a dynasty who was initially set up by God to initiate the redemption and to bring about, not just to initiate the redemption, but to bring the redemption to the world. Just like there's a comparison between the first redemption and the last redemption. The first redemption was preceded with a series of 6 or 7 tzaddikim, and Moshe was the 7th one, and he is the one who brings about the redemption. So too, the Rebbe made very, very strong statement. Anybody that was able to kind of like really get what the Rebbe was saying had to be flawed, had to be shocked, had to be standing with their mouth gapingly open at such an incredible statement. Here is a person that's basically declaring that he is here to bring redemption to the world from the first day when he became Rebbe. In other words, the Rebbe was stating the first time he declared that he's Rebbe, that he's Mashiach. As extreme as that sounds, he didn't say those words literally, but he said those words literally. He said it in his as he was channeling and as he was a Rebbe, the Chabad Rebbe, and when they became Rebbe, they always became Rebbe by saying the discourse, a Hasidic discourse, because only a Rebbe can say a Hasidic discourse. We can repeat Hasidic discourse, but we can't say an original Hasidic discourse, because Hasidic discourses are divine knowledge. Hasidism is Torah. Not only is it Torah, it emanates from the soul of the Torah. It's not emanates, it is the soul of the Torah. And within the soul of the Torah, it's the quintessence of the soul of the Torah. It's messianic revelation. That's Hasidism, beginning with the holy Baal Shem Tov. This is already the window into the future world. The 7 Chabad Rebbeim advanced that to very, very deep and high levels. And the way they became Rebbe was, from a person amongst the people to be the master and the channeler who will channel this divine wisdom and divine light, and then be the shepherd of the Jewish people. They assume that leadership by activating a download and be the channel of that download. So the Rebbe, and as Hasidim always know, that when a Rebbe is saying a discourse, it's so deep that he is not speaking. That's the idea. That's why a regular person can't say it. It's only the one chosen by God to be the mouthpiece of Hashem in this world. To be, as I mentioned in another class last week, to be God's microphone in this world. Literally, like a microphone doesn't add any of its own opinions to the content of the speech. The microphone doesn't contribute anything, doesn't add a tiny slant to it. All it is an amplifier of the voice. So too, A Rebbe is Shechina medaberes mitech groinai. The Shechina, the God, the divine presence, speaks through his throat. That's why it's enormous, and that's why we have to recognize that the Rebbe, when he became Rebbe, placed himself as the seventh in a series of tzaddikim who are channeling, and the last and final one, which is the seventh one, completes it. He brings the Shekhinah down to this world, which at the time of the final redemption means complete redemption, which means that the seventh one is Moshiach. Now, throughout the Rebbe's leadership, the Rebbe did everything that needs to be done for the redemption to happen. How does that happen? The first thing Rambam says about Mashiach is you need to get the Jewish people connected to Judaism. You need to get the Jewish people connected to Torah and mitzvahs. So the Rebbe launches, and he didn't launch it himself. It was launched already by the sixth Rebbe, but the Rebbe expanded it exponentially, and that is the global Chabad network of his emissaries to reach the entire world and to get Jews who have become alienated from Jewish practice and from Jewish observance, and get Jews to keep Torah and mitzvahs. It started as a small movement, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And where I was last week, joined 6,000 or 6,000 people in one room at a banquet. But before that, like thousands upon thousands of emissaries, each one representing entire communities across the entire world from every country in the world. And their main focus and job is to chase down every Jew wherever they are and influence and get those Jews to get deeper connected to their Judaism in any which way possible. And this, throughout the 40 years of the Rebbe's physical presence in this world, as Chabad Rebbe, as the seventh Rebbe, when he was physically present in this world, grew exponentially, stronger and stronger, became intensified more and more and more and more. And finally, at the last few years of the Rebbe being present in this world, I would say, you would look at throughout the years, the Moshiach focus became more and more more expressed. In the first talk the Rebbe gave, he laid it out fully. After that, he was busy, and again, looking at it from our limited perspective, busy laying the foundations. First of all, creating an army. For the first couple of years, the Rebbe very much needed soldiers. So he needed to take people who are, have, a certain level of commitment, but he needed to ratchet up their level of commitment to levels beyond, so that they're completely devoted to the point of they have no identity other being his emissaries and being completely devoted to his mission. And there would be people who will have to devote their lives, give it their everything, as we're going to see in this talk, to the fulfillment of what he's asking of them. Because he was going to activate his influence on the world through people, as we're going to see why that's necessary as well. Why can't he do it just through divine light? Well, all this is going to be discussed in today's class. I'm going to planning to give on this more than one class today. So the Rebbe is training in his Hasidim. If you'll take a look at the early talks, it's all about complete Kabbalah's oil. Kabbalah's oil means not following your own mind, not following your understanding, but submitting yourself to a higher authority, to be able to understand that as high as your mind can reach, there are certain things that are beyond you, and your deepest connection to God comes by absolute and unequivocal submission. And that does not mean that Judaism does not require thinking and understanding. It does, but at the same time, the cornerstone is submission to something deeper, and that's what kingship means. The seventh Rebbe, and that is Moshiach, is the ultimate manifestation of God's kingship, and to connect to a king requires a submission. So that was kind of the groundwork. Then the movement expanded. Once these soldiers were like kind of educated with this, they went out across the world against soldiers of light. These are soldiers that are going not with weapons, guns, and who knows what, not weapons of destruction, but weapons of light. The Rebbe, for example, took Shabbos candles, and he employed men, women as well, entire families. The women's job was to reach as many women as they can and make Jewish women who don't keep the Shabbos and so on and so forth to start keeping Shabbos, or at least initiate the light of Shabbos by lighting Shabbos candles. Now, that's called, connected to the Torah portion of Parshas Chayei, Ner Shabbos Kodesh. In the acronym for it is Neshek. Neshek means ammunition. So he's basically giving ammunition to holiness, because part of what Mashiach has to do is overpower the forces of evil, destroy evil with light. A little bit of light chases away a lot of darkness. So that was one campaign. And then, of course, the Tefillin campaigns and all the other campaigns of strengthening Jewish observance and so on and so forth. Including in that came the thousands upon thousands of Jews who literally made a complete 180-degree turnaround in their lives. See, most of the Jews the Rebbe reaches is not that they've completely had a complete overhaul, but that they've at least begin to introduce Judaism in their life, have some level of Jewish practice. But there is a great percentage that have completely flipped over their entire lives and became fully observant people. It's the first time in Jewish history that there was such a return to Judaism by the masses. The Rebbe's influence is extended far beyond Chabad, because after the Rebbe's doing these effects more and more and more, it started generating within the rest of the Jewish people who did not see themselves as of that time as followers of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and yet they had different philosophies, and many even were opposed to the Rebbe because the Rebbe did things that most people didn't understand. But yet everybody started emulating, and the tshuva movements expanded, and each one in their own unique way, and others were doing other different methods of getting Jews close to Judaism, like seminars and so on and so forth. And it exploded in Israel and across the world, in which literally, I don't know the numbers, but it's safe to say, I think, that there's probably close to 1 million Jews who have completely what we call become Pali Tshuva, which means to completely transform their lives and become fully observant families and so on and so on, maybe probably even more than that. And that is the enormous tshuva which Moshiach needs to bring to the world. All of this is what the Rebbe has been doing, kind of in that direction. However, as he was doing the groundwork, he wasn't emphasizing that much throughout the years how this is all Mashiach. The point was the work that needs to be done. But as we were getting to the later years, farther, in other words, when we got to the 80s, the Rebbe, for instance, started like put the pedal to the metal in 1980 and started demanding that Moshiach has to come now. And it was calling, especially he created an army, very, very interesting. His army was not what we would usually expect to be in an army, although we find that the side of the unholy does that. You can see Hamas training little children with M16s. They walk in our training camps, and literally they train them to hate Jews and to want to murder Jews and to sing songs about murdering. That's what you see in the unholy. The Rebbe did it in the holy side. He took little children. He instituted a thing called Tzivos Hashem, the armies of God, only children. And the point of this army of children was to beseech God to bring the redemption. And together with the Rebbe, they stormed the heavens. The Rebbe would cry together with them, Ad Masai, which means, how long, God, are you going to withhold the redemption? So as the Rebbe is fighting the battle on earth, he's also fighting, his feet are planted on earth, and his head is in the heavens. And he's fighting the spiritual battle as well against all the accusations, against all the prosecuting forces that are trying to stop the redemption. And the Rebbe is fighting up there with the little children to beseech and evoke God for the redemption to happen, similar to Moshe Rabbeinu, also fighting with God and kind of like saying, why are you causing pain for your people? Let's get the show on the road. Moshe comes calling back to God. You see the similarity where the Rebbe is doing the same thing. And then we come to 1998. I'm sorry, not 1988 is like in Chabad, those who know Chabad history and those who know very much what was going on, that was the time that the Rebbe's wife passed away. And after her passing, which Kabbalistically, I'm not going to get into the deeper reason for this, but at that time, the Rebbe kind of suddenly launches forward full speed, and his energies, and after that, like every talk is just redemption. Moshiach becomes like the focal point of everything. How it's our job to like put in all our energies, all about the redemption, all about the redemption. It's peaking. In other words, the energy of redemption is peaking. 1990, the year 5750, 1990, cosmically, it's midday. The Rebbe announces to the world, basically 1990, 1991, the time of redemption has arrived. And the Rebbe goes so far, although he's always very careful not to speak of himself, other than he does declare from the very beginning of his onset of his leadership that he's the leader of the Jewish people. Again, the Rebbe keeps on hiding behind his father-in-law, that his father-in-law, who's the Rebbe sees the Rebbe is just a continuation of his father-in-law's leadership, which is also incredibly mystically an incredible thing. The Rebbe at that time, all the years, is declaring his father-in-law as the Moses of the generation and the leader and the king of the king, meaning the spiritual king of the generation. The Nasi Hadar. Nasi doesn't only mean leader, Nasi also means king. And obviously, we're not talking about king over here with a bunch of servants and sitting on a throne, at least not until the full revelation of Moshiach. We're talking about someone who cares and is responsible for the Jewish people. During this entire time, we see the Rebbe is the one who takes responsibility for the Jewish people and literally gets involved in all aspects that the ultimate leader has to be in charge of. For instance, what Israel's decisions regarding Israel going to war, Israel abstaining from war, Israel deciding that maybe in order to have peace in the land, we should negotiate with terrorists and so on and so forth. The Rebbe is one of the loudest voice, clearly, and the most unshakable and clear voice about what Israel needs to do. And the Rebbe got a lot of flack from the Israeli government. How is it that you're living not in Israel, you're not even an Israeli citizen, and you go and you tell Israelis what to do? And yet the Rebbe knew about that. He even mentioned it in his talks, but yet he fired and fired and fired and cried. And today's days, it is seen that everything the Rebbe said is exactly the reality. The people who have believed that the way ahead is to negotiate peace for land are now standing. I watched an interview yesterday with a woman who was an extreme leftist, and she's a beautiful woman, a special lady. It was just so beautiful to hear her talk. She's so real. And she was talking about how she grew up and where she stood, and how just in the last month, she says, if you take a look at Gaza and you see what it looks like, it's destroyed now. Buildings are destroyed and so on and so forth. She says, my world that I believed in, she's around a 60-year-old woman. My entire world that I've believed in all my life is suddenly now laying in shambles. It's destroyed. You have no idea what I'm going through now. But I know the truth. I know who the enemy is. I believed in the essential goodness of mankind. I didn't believe that evil really exists. And now I've seen it with my own eyes. She says what brought her to that. She saw some of the videos of what Hamas did. She couldn't restrain herself when they told her in Israel not to look at these horrors. She looked at it. She said, I saw what I saw, and suddenly my entire worldview was flipped on its head. I'm completely transformed. She does say that some of her friends are still holding on to their previous view of peace activism, and so on and so forth. And she doesn't blame anybody, but she's saying her complete transformation. And so it is with thousands of people like her who had one set of belief until now, and now are realizing that the Lubavitcher Rebbe is right when the Rebbe was saying all along that Israel has to stand strong, Israel shouldn't negotiate one bit, and that the nations will see Israel's strength. That's when there will be peace in the land, so on and so forth. The Rebbe was saying that any types of deals will put all of millions of Jews in danger for rockets and for the massacres that we've seen. So that you can see the Rebbe was completely. The Rebbe was fighting also that conversions. I'm not going to go through all the Rebbe's fights, but the Rebbe was fighting the wars for Israel, for the Jewish people, in an incredible way, which is one of the things Maimonides also says Mashiach needs to do. He needs to fight the wars of God. Doesn't mean that he's a militant. It means he fights them by inspiring, by fighting them spiritually and being a powerful voice against darkness, against the forces that want to destroy the Jewish people, both spiritually and physically. In 1990, 1991, 1992, as we said, the Rebbe accelerates incredible his Mashiach message. And at the end of 1991, the Rebbe basically says, makes a shocking announcement in which he declared something that really shook the entire Chabad movement. The Rebbe then stated very clearly that I, as your teacher, as your guide, have done whatever I can, my work. Now the work is yours. You're responsible for the redemption. It's not just me. I'm not resigning, but I'm not the one. You can't rely on me just being my applauding me and being my what you might call cheerleaders. That's not enough. You need to take responsibility. You need to do whatever you can to bring the redemption. It was a shocking talk because the Rebbe expressed himself very, very painfully. It's almost like everything I've done has been in naught, or naught, the Rebbe said, like very intense words with Hasidim, which shook the entire Chabad movement and the Hasidim to the core. They didn't know. People had no idea what the Rebbe wanted at that time. But after that, a week or two later, the Rebbe started when he would come and give his talks, to open up, to give instructions of what we're supposed to do. And his teachings during that entire, what we might say, 10 or 11 months, then the Rebbe had a stroke, okay, in 1992, followed by another stroke in 1994, which led in 1994 to his passing, or I say for a reason, the passing to our physical eyes of the Rebbe's soul leaving his body, and but not his going away. The proof for the idea that he's not going away is from the hundreds and I would say probably millions of stories of Hasidim connecting to the Rebbe, seeking his counsel, as if he's literally has an address in 770, and Hasidim being answered their questions. I'm not going to tell these stories right now, but in the last month, I've had 3 direct responses from the Rebbe, which, if I would tell the story, would make your hair stand up on your head, where I was in questioning certain things, and I was wondering, I needed guidance. And I'll tell you where my guidance is coming from. I have an app. This is how crazy it is. On this phone, I have an app. I'll show it to you right now. An app on my phone. It's this one over here called Igros Kodesh. It's this white one. It's very simple. It's an app. It opens up to Rebbe's letters. This is one of the letters that I just received last night. It's very personal, which I'm not going to share, but I can't even tell you. I'm flabbergasted. Something intense that I was experiencing, and answers. And so it is so it is with millions of people across the world. So the Rebbe is very much involved. People make decisions based on that regarding lives and death, and miracles happen. So there is no question that the Lubavitcher Rebbe is now, just to intensify that, do you know that just the other day, 150 members from family members of the hostages who are in Gaza, flew to the United States from Israel and came to the Rebbe's, to the Ohel, or the Rebbe's resting place, physical resting place, if you might say. I am even confused regarding the whole situation over there, but there's no question that over there miracles happen. And these 150 families came in. You can take a look in front of the people usually put papers with requests. You can see pictures from it. They have the pictures of their relatives begging and crying that their relatives should come home. Let's hope the miracles will happen. But in any case, the fact that 150 family members made the trip to the United States when they're in such agony and pain is because people know that this is an address where miracles happen. Unbelievable miracles happen. I have to tell you something. Israel is filled with rabbis, miracle workers, great tzaddikim, of the greatest of the greatest. Where is there a place where there are greater, saintlier people buried in the land of Israel? So you can go to so many rabbis and pray, and miracles do happen. Yet the entire 150 of them traveled all the way to the United States to come to the Rebbe because, and I will say one thing, It's because the Rebbe is the one in charge, the leader that God placed in charge of this generation. And therefore, yes, he's responsible for the hostages in that sense. Obviously, he needs Hashem's, the Rebbe can't do anything without the miracle coming from above. The Rebbe is just a channel for God's light. But so in any case, going back to why I'm giving, what these talks are all about. So what I am doing in this whole series called Key to Redemption is the talks that the Rebbe started in 1991 in the I would say in April, May of 1991 through March, if you might say, in 1992. Those were the last talks, and those were the instructions for us. The Rebbe says, basically, in one of the talks, he said it, the key to redemption is in your hands. You need to do, I finished my work. That means, what that really means, as we're going to see, Moshiach's energy has already been downloaded in the world. Now it's just up to us to open ourselves up to receive it, for it to be activated physically so that all of us can experience it in our physical world. So we're now in between the presence of Mashiach in the world and its full activation. So there's nothing more important than studying these talks, appreciating them, understanding them deeply, so that we can activate Mashiach. The Rebbe said stunning things during that year. Most of them went over the heads of all the people listening. Most of them went over the heads of everybody, because they were coming week after week. The Rebbe was revealing at that time just mind-blowing things. And it was just, and it's very deep and hard to fully process. So I took it upon myself in the last year and saying, listen here, stuff is printed in Hebrew for the last 30 years, in Yiddish. In English, then now it actually was translated. But a regular person opening up those books, unless you are well versed in Chabad Hasidism, it is not easy for someone to be able to understand it and to be able to appreciate what is being taught. So I feel my obligation. I've been teaching Hasidism for about over 20 years. And I feel like everything I've taught all these years is just so that I can have hopefully enough of Hasidic background that I can probe these talks and bring it to the English-speaking audience so that people can hear what the Rebbe said. Now, this particular, and that's the series called Key to Redemption, and we are holding now in the episode 31, because this is the 31st talk. This is from Pashas Chayei Sarah. This is a very unique one, because as we discussed in class number 1, this is the one where the Rebbe spoke to his generals. Because once a year, just like I went last week to New York, this started already in 1984 is when they started this yearly conference of all of his emissaries leaving their posts and everybody coming to spend Shabbos with the Rebbe and the Rebbe inspiring them. So in 1992, the Rebbe gave them the mission to bring Moshiach. Earlier, he spoke to the Jewish people as a whole, but this time he's specifically speaking to his emissaries. And he sharpens his directions in a very clear way. And that's what's so powerful over here. Now, I'm holding episode 31. We probably did about 23 episodes. Quite a few are missing. I didn't do 31 episodes. Each episode is about 3 to 4 classes. So it's a lot of classes. They're all, if you want to find them all, on our YouTube, there is a playlist called Key to Redemption. Over there, I have them all. There are those that are missing. Let's say, for example, if I did 22, but then I didn't manage to do 23, 24, 25, that's 23, 24, 25. I hope I'm filling in next year or this coming year. Hopefully Mashiach will be already fully revealed. I don't have to do that. But I feel this is part of bringing my little part that I can do to help bring the redemption, is to make this knowledge available to everyone. So I'm sorry for this long introduction. I feel that there was a lot of new listeners, and it's important that people understand where we're coming from. This is not meant to be an inspirational class just to excite you that Mashiach is coming. This is meant to give the meat and potatoes. This is meant to give us the substance, the main, or we might say bread, of the redemption, so people understand the redemption in a fundamental way and understand certain truths that need to be said today's days, which there is tremendous amount of ignorance, particularly about what the Rebbe said. People believe, and there is a false, kind of narrative out there that the claiming that the Rebbe is Moshiach is a fanatical belief that a few kooks have kind of started this crazy movement, and it's not based on anything real, and it's just a negative thing, and we just have to like kind of, I would, to those who believe, I'm here to counter that narrative, because if you learn, what I would say is either you learn it yourself, take the books and study them, or go through these 31 episodes, which is about for 3 times 30, about close to 100 classes that I've given already on it. Just hear what the Rebbe says, and then you'll tell me if this movement is based on nothing or it's actually what the Rebbe has been saying. Matter is, one of the instructions the Rebbe gave about preparing the world for Mashiach is that we have to do it in a way that people can understand and people can relate to. Just screaming off the rooftops and a message and shouting it into people's faces doesn't do any good. Actually causes the opposite reaction. People, want to run away from it. So I'm trying to do the best I can to put it into words in a way that people can understand. Okay, so that you understand that I'm coming. So we are speaking very extreme teachings over here, but this is what's necessary for an extreme transformation of the entire world. A world that doesn't know God to a world which will be filled with divine consciousness, where earth is going to be holier than heaven. But appreciate one thing. Most of the big voices in Chabad, most of the big teachers of Chabad, incredible scholars, big voices, are afraid of this topic. Just simply afraid. Don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I call out to them. The time has come to refresh your own memories of what you yourself witnessed in 1991 and 1992. Study it well and teach. Time is running out. Mashiach is going to be here any minute. Those who have a voice, those who have an ability to speak, those who have thousands of listeners, just tell the truth. No more hiding, no more pretending it didn't happen. Speak the truth. The world needs to hear it. Speak it, articulate it. This is very, very important. And if I remain one of the only voices, so be it. But that's where we're holding right now. Okay. I didn't intend to give a 30-minute introduction. The last thing we learned in episode number 1 was that the Rebbe says to the conference of Shluchim, there is I would recommend listening to class number 1 of this, where there I explained chapter 1. The Rebbe over here tells the Shluchim, his emissaries, again from the entire world, that from time to time there is an upgrade in the shlichus, in the mission. In other words, what the shluchim need to do. Till now, the work was to prepare the world for Mashiach by getting Jews to keep Torah and mitzvahs, but the emphasis was on the Torah and on the mitzvot, the study of Torah and the doing of the mitzvot. That was the emphasis in spreading and awakening Jewish identity. But now the Rebbe says the mission is now being focused and elevated to the final mission. That's what the Rebbe says. From now on, it's the final mission. And what is that? One thing left. Go back to your communities and ready every single person you meet that they should be ready to greet Mashiach. And that's what the Rebbe is going to explain now further why that is. Now, I have to say, it's important that we read context. It's always important. In episode 30, in the Shabbos before that, in the Parshas Vayera talk, the Rebbe dropped the biggest bomb. He said that not only is Moshiach, the Rebbe explains that there is a Moshiach in every generation. There is a human being, a Mashiach, who's a potential Mashiach. But it's possible that that Mashiach should pass away and never be activated. It's Mashiach on standby. Why is it possible that that Mashiach, he's potentially the one that if God needs to activate Mashiach, God will download, or the God will spark the soul of Mashiach into that human being, and he will be the Mashiach. If the Jewish people are worthy, for whatever reason, the redemption, God decides that the redemption should come at any given time. So there always has to be a human being ready to facilitate that role. But it's possible, and not just it's possible, so it happened throughout all of history, that all the potential Mashiachs, their seeds never germinated. They didn't activate it to be the Mashiach in the literal sense to bring about the final redemption. Why? Because for whatever reason, the redemption didn't come. Or the redemption was not meant to happen at that time. The Rebbe, however, in Parshas Vayera states clearly, this is what's crazy. He says that in our generation, all the work has been done already. And therefore, we finished whatever we needed to finish doing, we did already to prepare the world for Mashiach. If that's the case, then therefore, he says, we're holding at a complete different time. And that is that the Moshiach, that's the potential that is unrevealed, is now already revealed. Who's the Moshiach that he says that is already revealed? My saintly father-in-law, the leader of the generation. Which, as mentioned and discussed in the earlier classes, the Rebbe and his father-in-law are one soul. The Rebbe said that many times. So he says, this is the leader of the generation, which that means, what does that mean? He's already revealed. That means his soul has already been activated. Once God activates Mashiach's soul in the world, God doesn't change his mind. As long as Mashiach is only a potential, then it's possible that it's a potential. But once there has been a divine communication and an activation of Mashiach's soul, there's no retraction. So the Rebbe says Mashiach is already revealed. So if Mashiach is already revealed, why don't we have the temple yet? What's going on? Why is there no redemption? Why is there 30 years, 32 years of enormous bloodshed since that time, and suffering and pain and misery? The Rebbe says there's another part to this. What's the next part? The Jewish people need to be ready to greet Mashiach. So it's interesting. As I mentioned in the last class, and I think it's important to review this point again, in Parshas Noach, 4 weeks before this talk, Parshas Noach, the Rebbe there made an accounting, made a cheshbon hanefesh. It was that you can listen to it. It's called higher accounting. He makes a cosmic accounting. He takes stock. And that's when he declares that all the work the Jewish people needed to do in order to bring the collective work that needed to be done to bring the redemption has been done already. Again, I'm not telling you anything of my own. The collective work that needed to be done in terms of the mitzvot that the Jewish people needed to do, the teshuvah, the repentance that the Jewish people needed to do, the spreading of the inner light of the Torah through Hasidism, which is also a preparation for Mashiach that has to be spread across the world, has already been accomplished. So everything has been done. He says people still have private fixing up that you need to do, but that's your own personal preparations for yourself, rectification. But in as much as Israel and the Jewish people are concerned, it's all done. The Rebbe then asks, so why is Mashiach not here? He answered a very interesting answer. He says, it's dependent on Mashiach. There's nothing else we need to do. Now it's Mashiach's turn to act. Now it's his turn. But in order to help Mashiach make the next move, which is to reveal himself, what's needed is the service of, we need to do Kiddush Levana. We need to go sanctify the new moon. As explained in that talk, what does it mean to go sanctify the new moon? The new moon represents Mashiach's arrival, Mashiach's revelation. The moon mystically is connected to the kingdom of Malchus based David. That's why we sanctify the new moon and we say, David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim, King David is alive forever. So we need to go sanctifying the moon. And during the sanctification of the moon, there's a verse that we say that we need to seek out God and we need to seek out King, as David Malcolm, David our king. David our king doesn't mean King David of the past. It means seeking out the David of the future, which is the dynasty of King David, Moshiach. We have to go seek him out. So the Rebbe says you need to go do the work of seeking out Mashiach. What's the work of seeking out Mashiach? Asking Mashiach to be their king. Because Mashiach is a king. A king cannot oppose, a king cannot proclaim himself king, because that's not kingship. That's dictatorship. A king needs to be accepted by the people. So during that time, if anybody knows a little underlying history of Chabad, read upon it. I was living through this. I remember I was a young boy. I was 20 years old during this time, 18, 19, 20, while this was going on. And at that time, there was a whole movement of the Hasidim that were beginning to catch on what the Rebbe was saying, and they were sending the Rebbe in thousands of names of people signing their names and saying, we are asking you to be our king. We realize that the time of the redemption has arrived. We realize who you are. We are accepting your kingship upon ourselves as Moshiach. Whenever these letters were coming to the Rebbe's answers were, thank you. This is the time. This is bringing great satisfaction. The time is now. These are things that the Rebbe would have never allowed to come through earlier. But now the Rebbe was accepting them and saying, and the campaign should increase and so on and so forth. There was tremendous satisfaction. Unbelievable. So what happens 2 weeks later? So the Rebbe then, again, it says, now it's up to Mashiach. Mashiach has to reveal himself, but that has to be activated by the people. So 2 weeks went by when this is all going on. Especially the women were extremely active in this. And then on 2 weeks later, the Rebbe says, now Mashiach is revealed already. You can listen to the talk. It's a stunning talk. Mashiach is revealed already. People asked for it. The revelation is here. Now Mashiach as a king is already revealed. But now that Mashiach is revealed, now it goes back into your court. It keeps on going back from Mashiach to the people. Now I'm tossing the ball back to you. It's like, playing volleyball. We knock the ball from side to side, or playing tennis, right? So that's what's going on. Now the ball is in your court. And it seems like the ball is in our court for 32 years, and we're still perhaps didn't knock the ball over for Mashiach to make the next move. What is the work that needs to be done? And this is and off that last week, the next week, Parshas Chayei, the Rebbe says what the work is. And he's telling it to all of his shluchim. Go out to the entire world, get everybody ready to greet Mashiach. Now, what does it mean to get them ready to greet Mashiach? It's going to be stated in the end of the talk. But I'm going to give you the main point that he says, is teach the world what Mashiach is, so that people understand the concept, understand the role of Mashiach, teach the world what redemption, all about redemption and what people ought to be expecting, and also teach the world what Mashiach is all about, so they're ready to greet him. In other words, when people get the understanding of what Mashiach is all about, then they'll be able to greet Mashiach, including discern who Mashiach is and connect to him. He doesn't say that your job is to go tell everybody who Mashiach is. Although in the talk, later we're going to see, the Rebbe spells it out very clearly to all of his shluchim. And he says that that's the last work that needs to be done, that the people should now be ready to go greet Mashiach. Very intense and shocking. Now let's learn it. And I believe that now is the time. I firmly believe. Because as we're seeing, it seems like if we would have done our work appropriately, we could have avoided these last 30 years of sorrow and pain. Sadly, the exile has wreaked havoc upon us. The concealment of Mashiach becoming concealed after his revelation has wreaked havoc on the Rebbe's inner core. Now, this itself, that Mashiach is hidden and concealed after his revelation, is something that is stated openly, very openly, in Midrashic and Jewish sources, that Mashiach becomes concealed and hidden after his revelation. He reveals himself, and during that period of time when he's concealed, there will be enormous suffering for the Jewish people and anti-Semitism. Look at Rabbeinu Bechaya in the end of Parsha Shemos, where he discusses it in explicit words. He says the same like Moshe, when Moshe revealed and then he was hidden for 3 months, Mashiach will be hidden. Midrash says 45 days. Rashi says, in the end of the book of Daniel, a much larger number that I'm not going to say, but more than 32 years. So no one will tell me that it's outside of the pale of Judaism, that Mashiach comes and reveals himself and then is concealed. It's there openly. And look in the Arizal and Pirush of Or Hachama in Parsha Shemos in the Zohar. There's a Pirush of the Or Hachama, one of the students of the Arizal. He brings verbatim from Reb Chaim Vital, the greatest student of the Holy Ari, which literally describes the type how Mashiach will disappear, that his body and his soul will be concealed. And where will he be taken? To the lower Gan Eden. And he describes a process where after he's revealed, but not to the entire world, but also only to a closer knit community. And then he says after that, he disappears. Physically, meaning he seems to have passed away. Where does he go? Up to Gan Eden. He's hanging out over there until the green light happens and the redemption has to come. So this is where we're holding right now. It's 32 years later, and we're still scratching our heads, this, like that. The Rebbe spells it out. It's time. It's time for us to re-examine the talks, to learn them, to wake up within ourselves, to recognize the power of redemption is in our hands. Okay, sorry. We are now holding chapter 2. So, how much time do we have left for chapter 2? Okay, I want to keep these only for an hour, so we're just going to do chapter 2. And this one, the connection, the Rebbe says, of the Shlichus. Now the Rebbe is going to take this whole idea and connect why the Shluchim, why his emissaries, at that time there were probably about 1,500 of them, now there's over 5,000. Why the Shluchim particularly are connected to this final mission. Because the Rebbe is going to explain that Moshiach and emissary work are actually one and the same. Because Moshiach himself is an emissary. Moshiach himself is a Shliach. Moshiach himself is an agent sent by God. And therefore, the fact that Moshiach appoints Shluchim, emissaries, to activate his energy in the world only makes sense because his energy is the energy of a Shliach. The Rebbe even said in the earlier talk, and he's going to repeat it in this talk, that Shliach and Moshiach are almost the same word. The difference is only that Shliach has a lamed, the letter lamed, and Moshiach has the letter mem. Other than that, it's the same word. The difference between a lamed and a mem is in numerics. Lamed is 30 and mem is 40. So the difference between the lamed and the mem is only 10. So what that means is, in order for a shliach, the purpose of the shliach is to bring Mashiach. But how does a shliach bring Mashiach? When the shliach himself becomes Mashiach, a little spark of Mashiach. How do you become Moshiach? By activating the spark of Mashiach in you, which is activated. The spark of Mashiach in us is an all-consuming devotion to God. And therefore, it expresses itself when all of our 10 faculties of our soul are directed towards the fulfillment of God's wishes. Shliach means a shliach means you're an agent. What does an agent mean? Devoted to, you have a mission. You're doing something, you have a mission, you have a purpose. But it's possible to have a purpose and kind of engage and invest in your purpose only a little bit of yourself. So the Rebbe is saying that in order for the shliach to reach Mashiach, you have to become your shliach. Your shliach has to be your everything. By doing what? By taking your own 10 powers of your soul, which consist of all of our intelligence and our emotions, and investing it in our shliach, in our shlichus. What's our shlichus? The Rebbe is saying now to bring Mashiach. So now he's going to, in a very, very deep and powerful way, going to tie together the concept of shlichus to Mashiach. But he's basically saying to all of his shluchim, you've been my shluchim for the last 40 years. You've been doing amazing work. But I want to reveal to you the secret of why I appointed shluchim. I didn't just appoint shluchim because I have work to get done, and therefore I appointed shluchim. There were many tzaddikim through all the generations, they didn't have shluchim. Shluchim actually is a new word. It's an old word, it's a concept, a Torah concept, but it's a halachic concept, as the Rebbe will talk about. But you don't have any, it doesn't say Rabbeinu Yehuda Hanasi, the Rebbe, the one who made the Mishnah, had shluchim. The Baal Shem Tov didn't have shluchim. The Baal Shem Tov had chasidim. The Alter Rebbe, Shneur Zalman of Rebbe, had chasidim. They had something called shadar, which is a little bit already a concept of shliach, but it wasn't known by the name shliach. Rabbi Akiva, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, all these tzaddikim, they didn't have shluchim. Suddenly, the Lubavitcher Rebbe has a whole apparatus of shluchim, and the whole world knows about it. So the Rebbe says, why do I have shluchim? Because I myself am a shliach. Because Mashiach is a shliach. And he's going to explain on the most incredible, deepest way why shliach, you can't have Mashiach without the concept of shliach. It has to be shluchim who have to bring Mashiach. But he's going to say, by the way, he's not just talking to his signed up shluchim. He's talking to every Jew in the generation, because later in the talk he says that he has appointed every single Jew, the leader of the generation has appointed every single Jew, man, woman, and child of this generation to be the shliach to bring Mashiach. That means that we have to, every single one of us has to become laser focused on bringing Mashiach. And we have to employ to that end our everything, our intellect and our emotion, our 10 powers of our soul. We have to give it our all. And that's how we will bring Mashiach. So now he says, where do we find that Mashiach is a shliach? He says, let's go back to the first story. What's so amazing in this talk is the Rebbe is going to take all of history and focus it into that it's all part of one mission. But Mashiach is the grand culmination of that awesome divine mission. It begins with Moses. It really began with Abraham, who sends his servant Eliezer on a shlichus, on a mission to bring about the marriage of Isaac and Rebekah, which is going to result in the Jewish people being born. It's unbelievable, which is that mission. But it takes on a whole new energy when Moses is sent by God to redeem the Jewish people. But the ultimate shliach is Mashiach, who wraps it all up. But in the talk, the Rebbe is going to say how Moshe and Moshiach are two dynamic forces that are two people, but they fuse together in the concept of shliach. And then the Rebbe is talking to his shluchim and teaching, and to shluchim, meaning his inner circle of shluchim, and expanding it to all of the Jewish people, using the formula of what shliach represents to activate Mashiach in the world, which is what? To come greet to Mashiach. And it will require the dynamics of a combination, as we're going to see, of Moshe, together with Moshiach. It's a fusion of two souls, of two energies that join together. So let's see. When God tells Moshe Rabbeinu, I want to send you to redeem, that God calls on Moshe. This is in Exodus in the beginning. When God speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu, when he tells him, I'm sending you to redeem the Jewish people, Moshe puts up resistance. He fights for a while. He doesn't want to accept that role. Finally, one of his arguments at the very end is, please God, send shlach na b'yad tishlach. Send with the one that you usually send. Rashi says that he explains, Moshe said, till now, my brother Aaron, my older brother, was your prophet. God communicated to Aaron. The Torah doesn't speak about it, but there was many prophecies that came to Aaron, Moshe's older brother, while the Jews were in Egypt. Aaron was with them. Moshe wasn't in Egypt. Moshe was off-site for many years. He had to run away from Egypt. He was in Midian there, right? He got married. So Aaron was on site. God communicates. So Moshe says, you sent many messages with Aaron. Why send him to redeem the Jewish people? That's Rashi's interpretation. The Midrash, however, says that when Hashem said to Moshe, send, and this is also which Midrash? Midrash Lekach Tov and Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer in two places. So the Midrash says, Biyad oisay ish sha'ata asid l'shlayach, in the hands of the person that you are eventually going to send. Amar Moshe Ribono Shel Olam. Moshe says, Master of the world, shlach na b'yad tishlach, biyad Moshiach. Send it in the hand of Moshiach, shu asad liglois. Moshiach is going to be revealed. So why are you giving the mission to me to redeem the Jewish people of Egypt? Send Moshiach. Now Rashi also makes hint to this. Besides sending to Aaron, Rashi says, Moshe says, since I'm not gonna. What's the argument? Why should he send Mashiach? Moshe says, if you're sending me, it's going to be an unfinished business. I'm going to take them out of Egypt. I'm not even going to manage to bring them into the Holy Land. Moshe passed away. Joshua brought them into the Holy Land. The deeper meaning of that is that even though Moshe was the power behind Yeshua bringing him into the Holy Land, but the fact that Moshe does not put his feet into the land of Israel, what that means is that their coming into the land is not going to be permanent. Because Joshua did not have the power to plant the Jewish people in the. Moshe would have had the power to plant them there, but for whatever reason, it wasn't God's plan. So Moshe he brings them just to the border. Yeshua is going to bring them into the land of Israel. So Moshe said, why send me and I'm not going to complete the job and bring them into the land of Israel to be permanently there? Why don't you send your man who's going to accomplish it to the very end? And that is Mashiach. That was Moshe's suggestion to God, or his, not suggestion, but Moshe's declining of accepting the mission. It might have even been the last attempt that he tries. So, and obviously God didn't accept it, and Moshe wasn't. So the Rebbe asks a very interesting question. The Rebbe says, whatever Moshe Rabbeinu knew, obviously Moshe had, at this moment, Moshe had already prophecy, right? He knew that that he would not complete the job. So if Moshe has prophecy and he knows he's not going to complete the job, where is this prophecy coming from? He has information. If he knows, then God knows. So whatever Moshe knows, God knows. If God knows Moshe is not going to complete the job, and yet God is selecting Moshe, if God wouldn't know about it, so Moshe might be saying, listen here, I know that I'm not going to complete the job. So I'm letting you know, God, so you might as well choose the one that will be able to complete. But obviously, if Moshe knows, then God knows. And yet God is choosing Moshe. That means that we're not looking for the person to finish the job right now. We need someone to initiate the first phases of redemption, the first redemption. And even though it's not going to be complete, God knows that, and yet he's choosing Moshe. So why does Moshe have a better idea than God has? What is he suggesting? Like, what's the content of Moshe's request over here, send Mashiach, when God, whatever this very idea that Moshe is not finished, that Moshe is not going to finish it and Mashiach will complete it, God also knows that, and God is still choosing Moshe. So what is he now bringing to God's attention as if God doesn't know that? That's question number one. Now the Rebbe flips the question on the other side, and he says, on the other hand, Moshe's arguments, this is a very powerful idea. Moshe's arguments are not human arguments. They're godly arguments. Because all these biblical figures, Mashiach, of course, as we said earlier, and Moshe and Abraham, Isaac, they're not just human beings. They're human beings imbued with divine attributes, with divine powers. They're personifications of godliness in the physical world. Moshe is, his level, where he's plugged in, is to the divine intelligence, primarily to the power of Chachma. Sometimes it says Moshe is the Das, other times it says Moshe is the power of Chachma, of God's wisdom. That's why he brings the Torah to the world, which is God's wisdom. So if Moshe is making this argument, it's not his human reasoning, it's divine reasoning. The divine mind, based on its intelligence, is making an argument. What's the argument? That since this is going to be an incomplete mission, why not choose the one who can bring it to the very end? So, meaning this is a correct argument. It's not an incorrect argument. So if this is God's mind that is making this argument, being voiced through God's physical channel in this world, making the argument to God, why doesn't God accept it? And God kind of dismisses the argument. If it's God's own intelligence that's saying that this is the way it should be. What's the Rebbe's answer? So the Rebbe says, no, we have to read into Moshe's question a deeper thing. Moshe was not refuting his mission. This is such insight. Moshe was not saying, dismiss me and a choice someone else. He knows that if God chose him, he's got to do it. At this point, he knows already he's going. His argument was not when he said, send b'yad tishlach, send in the one that your future is, send the Moshiach, is that I'm not going, let someone else do it. What Moshe was requesting was, I don't want to do a half-baked job. I don't want to be an agent whose job is not going to be completed. I want a complete redemption. But what does that mean? I want that the redemption that I initiate in Egypt should string itself up, should be wired up with the complete redemption. I know it's going to be thousands of years, but I want it to be one redemption. I don't want it to be two separate redemptions. A redemption that kind of doesn't have the endurance, and then another redemption. These two missions should not be two separate missions that have no bond together. I want to bond my soul with Mashiach so that we become one mission. And that argument, that was the request. That argument God accepted because it was a rightful argument. God did accept and did relent to Moshe's request, and God hitched the two redeemers together. That's why the Midrash tells us that Moshe is the first redeemer and he's the final redeemer. Moshe says, I want to accomplish the mission completely. I don't want to get stuck in the middle. And God said, right, you know what? You are the final redeemer. Not physically, because Moshe is from the tribe of Levi, and Moshiach has to come from the tribe of Yehuda. Two different tribes, two different powers. But spiritually, your souls, the souls of Mashiach and the souls of Moshe, are intertwined and interlooped one with each other. And together, the fusion creates the dynamic for the redemption. It will come in two spurts. The first spurt will be by the time of the Exodus, the final, and then the next stage of it is going to reach, it's going to fully manifest through Moshiach. So Moshe's request was a valid request. God accepted his request. Moshe is the final redeemer. It's just coming in stages. But what do we get from here? What do we get from here? We get from here the idea, the conclusion of this is that what is Moshiach? Moshiach is a Shliach. Because Moshe says to God, send, shlach no send, biyad in the hand, tishlach of the one that you're going to send. The word tishlach is the same word as shliach, but in terms of the sender. God is sending a shliach. That means Moshiach is a shliach. What is he a shliach? He's the agent, the emissary, or the agent that God sends to redeem the world. And he is bound up with Moshe. Together they serve one shlichus to bring about the whole purpose of creation. Moshiach together with Moshe. That is why the Rebbe is saying, hey, shluchim, you're very, 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 very important over here. Moshiach needs to complete his mission, and he's himself is appointing shluchim. He's a shliach, he appoints shluchim. And he's telling you that right now there's an upgrade in your shlichus. There's an upgrade in your mission. Further in the talk, he's going to explain why does Mashiach have to be a shliach? And why is the coming of Mashiach dependent on the type of entity called a shliach, an emissary? I'm just going to say one point. The concept of a shliach, as the Rebbe explains it over here, is someone who has within his or herself two absolute contradictory features. A shliach is someone who is working completely without any self-interest. He's working totally, he's completely altruistically given over to the one that is sending him. You're completely identityless. Your entire existence is to serve the one who sent you. However, you're not allowed to be a robot. What does that mean? The other side it is you have to have your own mind, your own thinking, your own inspiration, and you got to use your own faculties to bring about. In other words, you have to be a complete being on your own. You have to be separated in the sense that you have your mind. You're not asking every minute, guide me, teach me. No, you have to use your own head, your own understanding, your own faculties. Because a shliach can only be someone who has, you can't make a child, for instance, a shliach, because a child is not fully developed in their own thinking. So you have to be completely independent, but yet completely surrendered without any self-interest. He's going to explain that how that refers to Mashiach himself, and to Moshe and to Mashiach, and how that refers to his shluchim. And how that refers to, and that's the key dynamic to bringing about the redemption. That the shluchim are going to have to innovate on their own minds of what they need to do, this last and final stage, which sadly is taking 32 years that we haven't yet fully gotten it done. And the proof is that Mashiach has not yet revealed. So we have to still complete this. We mamish still have to complete this, whatever this is. So we have to use our own minds, but at the same time, we have to know what our shlichus is, and not decide, God forbid, that our shlichus is the stuff that we were doing before the Rebbe upgraded the shlichus. When the Rebbe said shlichus is now changing, it's being upgraded, it's being towards this has to become our shlichus. Not we're going back to, we're continuing to do what we've done for all these years because we haven't gotten the memo that there is an upgrade in the shlichus. That doesn't work. We have to know what the shlichus is. And from here, we have to operate. or else we are useless. We can be doing beautiful things in the world, but we're useless in what is needed now. So this is what we're going to talk about, Bezrat Hashem, in the next class. The next class we're going to introduce, where the Rebbe is going to explain fundamentally what shlichus means, what a shliach means. He's going to use the first person who is considered a shliach in the Torah, and that is Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, who went to be the matchmaker and to bring about, and he's going to explain what that idea was, an incredible deep understanding. From there, he's going to deduce what a shliach is, why it's inherent to Mashiach, and how this applies to all of our work. Thank you for joining. Bez Hashem, we shall continue. May we see Mashiach now.